Hey, what's going on? It is Celebration Bowl week. I'm Tolly Carr here in Atlanta. This is the epicenter of black college football. Simone Stanley out sick today. Look, there's no Simone. Where is she? She's at home. We just laid our microphone to the side. But always on the job, it is Wilton Jackson from Jackson, Mississippi. Wilton, what's up, brother?
What's going on, Tolly?
Hey, man, before we get into Prairie View A&M, this year's SWAC champions, their first title since 2009, and the matchup with South Carolina State, let's break down the game from this weekend. And that was the SWAC Championship game. You were there. How many different layers? What were the levels of complexity for that game, man, that second half? At one point in the second half, Wilton, it just looked like Madden. Like both teams were just running go routes, throwing the ball down the field, throwing all caution to the wind. It was entertaining on television for sure. I could only imagine what it was like being there in the vet.
Tyler, it was a lot more excitement in the second half than it was in the first half. And you just alluded to it. You talk about both quarterbacks were able to put the ball in the air to find their receivers. You talk about Cam Peters and what he was able to do, not even just in the air, but what he was able to do with his legs. He finished with 100 yards in that game. And then you talk about Jared Lockhart coming in. You just talked about it as far as like the passing game. That corner route that he found Janalen Dupree for a touchdown. I did not think Dupree was going to come down with that touchdown reception for Jackson State, and it was much needed. And then, of course, the deep ball where he found Shamar Savage, former Prairie View wide receiver, and that was a game changer in that play. Actually, they ran two plays because that first one was called back, and then he ran that same exact pass route to Shamar Savage again, which he equated to Jackson State moving the ball downfield. So, I mean, you hate to see Jacoby Morgan, as you can see right there, go down in that first play of the game after scoring that touchdown. I mean, it was definitely a game changer, but Jared Lockhart definitely stepped up and made plays. But you're talking about a game where, like, Prairie View came into this game and they were truly, truly motivated from the very start. I can remember talking to some people and knowing that very first play of the game that Jackson State ran with Ahmad Miller to the left side of the ball, and you could just see their defense was swarming. And we knew that this defense was, compact. They were able to get to the ball and stop opposing teams. And it wasn't that many teams this year that could slow down Jackson State's rushing attack. You're talking about second best rushing attack in FCS, and they finished the game, Tolly, with 84 yards on the ground. I didn't have that on my bingo card coming into the SWAC championship game. Maybe 120, maybe 140 yards, but less than 100 yards. That speaks volumes to Prairie View's defense, what Tremaine Jackson has been able to do. And they were able to slow down Jackson State on third down, which is a team that had been historically well all season basically on third downs. As a matter of fact, I was looking through the stats yesterday. Prairie View was able to slow down Jackson State. Jackson State finished 2 of 10 on third downs. But when you look at the rest of the games throughout the season, they had the best rate in terms of stopping Jackson State on third downs this season. Think about it. Jackson State also played Southern Miss, an FBS opponent, and they still had a better third down conversion rate. So it really does speak to that defense for the Panthers, which I really think is going to help them out against South Carolina State in the Celebration Bowl.
Both teams going at it at the line of scrimmage, and we've started to get a name for this defense late in the season. Coach Jackson calls them the no-name defense. How would you describe the vibe? Is it their physicality? Is it being in the right place? Is it making the right reads? Like, how would you quickly sum up and you're just having an elevator conversation talking to somebody about the Prairie View A&M defense?
Tyler, I think it's a combination of it all. I think it all starts with discipline, though, and he talks about that. Coach Jackson talks about discipline all the time, specifically on both sides of the ball. But that defense, when I tell you, in terms of like gap coverage, staying in contain, they were exactly where they needed to be on most plays, in most cases, to make plays defensively. I think when you start talking about that 3-3-5 defense that they run, their linebackers are really, really, really good. You're talking about guys like Darrell Starling, Kennedy Parker. They were all over the field in this game. There wasn't a play that they may not necessarily have made the tackle, but they didn't necessarily have an impact in that particular possession. And so you're talking about a fast defense, but then definitely one that's sound in terms of making sure they're in the right spots at the right time. And I really do attribute a lot of that to Coach Jackson's philosophy of making sure that they're disciplined and they're in the exact spaces of where they need to be at all times.
All right, so a couple more things on this game before we move on to the Celebration Bowl. they go in there and they're able to withstand that atmosphere in the vet. How would you describe this past Saturday's atmosphere at the SWAC championship game?
Oh, it was definitely what you would expect it to be. Personally, I would have expected a few more Jackson State fans to be there. They said it was roughly about 32,000 people, but I can tell you, even with the people that were there, it was still what you would expect the vet to be. But the thing is, Tolly, when Prairie View's defense started to show up and Prairie View's offense, obviously pretty much anchored by Cameron Peters and what he was able to do, because their rushing attack, when you start talking about Prairie View's running backs, you start talking about Chase Beamon and Lamajier McDowell, they didn't necessarily have the games that you would have maybe predicted them to have. It was Cameron Peters really being able to run the ball and throw the ball accurately to his receivers. So the vet was quiet at different times, specifically in that first half. When you're not scoring touchdowns, you're not able to move the ball, you're not able to continue drives on third downs, your defense is steady on the field. And I think the biggest thing that helped Jackson State in a way was that they kept Prairie View to field goals a lot in that first half versus them getting touchdowns. And while being that way or carrying it that way, you still had a vet that was still not as silent, but it was fairly quiet. I won't lie to you. I don't think I had seen the vet that quiet all season. Of course, you had big explosive plays in the second half where you found Jackson State contributing points or getting points, with leading with Jared Lockhart. But I think that overall, I had never seen it as quiet as it was, or even just at the end of the game, once Prairie View had actually won the game. Like, there were a certain amount of fans still on Jackson State's side, still standing up in the vet, just shocked, Tolly. Like, they were, I wouldn't even necessarily say sad, they were just shocked, because Jackson State fans don't expect Jackson State to lose at home. And, you have to think that the Prairie View players knew that it would be a challenge coming in, but they took pride in knowing that they won the SWAC championship at Jackson State's place.
In that second half, going back and forth, Jared Lockhart, Peters, they were just throwing bombs, touchdowns. Yep. I said the first team that's going to get a turnover is probably going to win this game. Jackson State came away with 2 turnovers, an interception and that fumble right at the 1 yard line, the 1 inch line. But they weren't able to convert. And I thought that said a lot about Prairie View's ability to hang in there despite those turnovers, but to still come away with that win.
It was. And I think, Coach kind of talked about that, the defense being able to withstand some of the pressure that comes with these type of games, and being that they have been battle tested. Now, I know I said just last week, Prairie View ended the season prior to playing Jackson State. They played 3 opponents that didn't have winning records, right? But they came into this game, you could tell, I know we joke about this, they came into this game eager, hungry, motivated to literally like make a statement. And they did that. And to your point, when Cameron Peters fumbles that ball on the 1 yard line, you're really realistically thinking like Jackson State could probably come back to win this game. There's definitely the possibility, considering how they had been able to move the ball, and Jared Lockhart was basically moving the ball seamlessly down the field with his receivers. But with Prairie View's defense stepping up and standing tall when it needed to, that was the game changer. And more so than anything, the biggest game changer in this game was third down conversions. Like, keeping Jackson State to 2, you would not have thought that this was going to be a game like that.
Man, what a heck of a game. What a heck of a victory for Prairie View A&M to go into the vet, beat Jackson State, where they had been unbeatable in the last few years in SWAC championship games. And now they will go on to face South Carolina State up at Wilton. We have much more time to talk about this. Imagine the SWAC next year. Lockhart, Andrew Body, there's going to be some quarterback play in that division in the SWAC. We could talk about that all spring, all summer long. Let's get to the Celebration Bowl now. Let's talk about the quarterbacks that will be there. We got a quarterback comparison chart here. We got William Atkins the 4th. We got Cameron Peters. On one side, Wilton, you got a pocket quarterback. On the other side, you got the dual threat. Talk about these 2 quarterbacks.
Tolly, these are 2 of the most dynamic quarterbacks in HBCU football, and really amongst FCS. You're talking about a William Atkins, to your point, loves to sit in the pocket and deliver his passes and can carve up defenses when he's able to do that. You're talking about a guy who formerly came from James Madison, so he knows what winning football looks like. He comes from a culture of winning. As you can see, the stats are there, over 2,300 yards passing, only 4 interceptions. And then you have a Cameron Peters who his skill set was on full display against Jackson State. He ran for 100 yards in that game, and especially for a Prairie View team that had leaned heavily on its rushing attack with its running backs. Cameron Peters was Prairie View's running back and quarterback on Saturday. You saw him, throw for over 2,300 yards as well, 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and you think 4 of those interceptions for Cameron Peters came against Alabama State. So if you really take that game away, he only, would have only had 3. So I think that when you look at this game, the quarterbacks obviously are going to play a big part in that. I think a big portion of this will be how much pressure can Prairie View get to William Atkins IV? Because if they can, I think South Carolina State in a way might be in trouble. I say that due to the fact that because when you start looking at the other elements of the offense, the running game, both teams have shown that they can run the ball. And you have to know that both teams are going to try to establish the run very early in the Celebration Bowl. But I think that in terms of when you look at the rushing attack for South Carolina State, it's very much more, it's not like it's more complementary versus like this is the major piece to South Carolina State's offense versus like with Prairie View, that they want to run the ball. Now, granted, when the passing game is consistent, which it had been or has been over the latter stretch of the season, that just makes them even more dangerous. But I think if it comes to the fact of which team can truly run the ball the best, I would give that edge to Prairie View. But I definitely think that if South Carolina State, if Prairie View is able to get pressure on Atkins, I think that could be a little bit trouble. It could pose a little bit of trouble for South Carolina State, potentially making them one-dimensional. I think if you are South Carolina State trying to shut down Cameron Peters, you absolutely have to be in your right spots at the right time in terms of gap protection, in terms of your linebackers. You can't necessarily be out of place in terms of what Cameron Peters wants to do because, again, he has the ability to run and find his wide receivers, and he has some good ones. Andre Dennis, Josiah Rockwell, those guys, they had strong performances in the game against Jackson State on Saturday. So they're going to definitely have to be prepared.
Yeah, and one thing about a running quarterback, and we didn't on that graphic, you didn't see his rushing numbers. He's second on the team. What is he, Wilton? Like 40 yards a game rushing on the average per game, and it just the amount of personnel that he can tie up. I mean, do you put a spy on the guy? Because you have to keep an eye on him. If your entire secondary has their back turned to Peters, like, man, he can just take off. So it'll be interesting to see how they scheme the game. If you'd like to scheme it at home, let's take a look at both teams and their numbers, and we'll have a primary focus on their offensive numbers here as we look at both teams' stats side by side. Wilton, both teams averaging right at 31 plus points per game. Total yards about the same. But you talked about it here. Here's where you start to see the difference in rushing yards and passing yards. You see Prairie View a little more balanced, and South Carolina State's going to lean a little heavier on the pass there. And third down conversions in the same neighborhood, 47% for South Carolina State, 43% for Prairie View A&M on third down conversion. Wilton, I think at the Celebration Bowl in Mercedes-Benz, it's even more important to keep your drives alive because when they go to a timeout, I mean, it's a timeout of all timeouts. The timeouts at the Celebration Bowl feel like they're like 10 minutes long. You got people start running out there giving out checks. You got Mickey Mouse dancing, like
famous people coming.
Yeah,
that they're gonna notify the crowd on.
Yeah, I mean, to keep the momentum alive, keep the ball in play. I don't know if that's a difference in the ball game, but I just know, man, when that drive stalls and you go to timeout, like all momentum just it's gone. It feels like there's several games within the singular game at the Celebration Bowl.
Well, those timeouts definitely make the game a lot longer. I can tell you that. For a game that starts at noon, I don't think we've ever gotten out of that game, the actual game, not press conference and celebration, all that. The game itself, it'd have to be between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. Probably leaning more to the 4 o'clock, right? But honestly, I think with these two teams and as disciplined that they are and the coaches that they have, you're talking about a coach in Tennis Bear, we know, the true disciplinarian. And then when you look at Tremaine Jackson, like you probably heard in his press conference, after Saturday's win and even on Monday for the Celebration Bowl, where he talks about he does things his way. Like there's a certain standard and structure that has to go in Tremaine Jackson's way, in which it has allowed Prairie View to have that success. So I don't think that the timeouts will really hurt either one of these teams, but I will point this out that, when you start talking about the defenses of these teams, both of them are obviously great, right? We know Prairie View has had the #1 defense in the SWAC for the most part the entire season. South Carolina State has been elite on defense. However, with that being elite, they are definitely a bend but don't break defensive unit. What I mean by that is South Carolina State is going to move the not South Carolina State. Prairie View is going to be able to likely move the ball. But one thing that I really, really appreciate about South Carolina State's defense is that when they get in the red zone, they turn into monsters. Like, there have been times where teams have moved the ball against them and they were basically keeping teams from scoring touchdowns and getting field goals. And so if you're Prairie View, you saw a lot of that in the first half against Jackson State. That is definitely something that the Panthers will need to make sure that they capitalize on even more, especially if they get into the red zone early, that you get touchdowns versus field goals.
Wilton, let's take a look at the stats again, Miles. Wilton, I want to give you a chance to talk about and maybe circle with our imaginary telestrator. And these are just offensive stats here. What's the one thing that you will keep an eye on that you think if a team hits their mark on this specific number, they'll be okay?
Oh, easy. This one is easy for me. Third downs. If either one of these teams truly hit their marks on third down, I think they win the game. And it was, like I said, it was evident in between Jackson State versus Prairie View. Again, Jackson State was 2 of 10. Prairie View was 10 of 21 on third downs. That's a huge difference. So while I do think this game between Prairie View and South Carolina State will be close, the team that hits the mark of true, third down conversions, I think this is the team that wins the game.
All right. There's Wilton with his analysis. Let's go to Friday night, Wilton. It will be the Battle of the Bands. The championship for the bands. We have 4 bands remaining. On the D2 side, it's going to be Miles College taking on Fayetteville State, the Marching Bronco Express. And then on the D1 side, it's going to be FAMU versus Southern, the Marching 100 versus the Human Jukebox. What are you looking forward to on Friday night, Battle of the Bands?
Man, Tolly, I'm looking forward to some great music. I'm looking forward to some great field show performances from all 4 bands, actually. But for sure, if you start on the D1 level, man, the Marching 100, the Human Jukebox. We know I've personally seen FAMU, some of their halftime performances this year, and they've been absolutely sensational. And of course, having seen Jackson State and Southern and some of Southern's performances as well, and just knowing that when you think about this Southern band this season, kind of coming off what they've been dealing with this year in the loss of Caleb Wilson, former trumpet player in their band. This is a different Southern band that's playing with a sense of purpose. They've been able to, they haven't obviously forgotten about Caleb Wilson. As a matter of fact, I think that with the loss of him, it's really fueled them to play their best. And you're talking about a band who had 160 plus new members. You're talking about a band director. When the situation happened with the loss of Wilson, he had to kind of get himself together before he could absolutely lead his band until this moment. And you don't necessarily know at the beginning of the season that you're going to have a year like this where you're going to be competing for a potential championship amongst bands. But here they are now. So I think that if you love HBCU bands, if you love style, musicianship, when you start looking at the, I'm just saying.
No,
I'm just saying.
That word. If you didn't get that one right.
Musicianship. And I know, and I say that because there are some people that feel like, well, Southern, they're just known for being able to play loud and in the stands and things like that. They're not going to necessarily have a good show. I think that people may be pleasantly surprised about what they do on the field. But I do think overall it's going to be an incredible performance between both D1 schools and then also the D2 programs as well. You have a Miles program that's trying to obviously repeat as champs. But you have a really strong Fayetteville State marching band that's coming and feels like they have a chance to really, really win and set the stage for something great.
I love Miles' band. That brass band, the horn, man. Look, I've heard it a million times, but their rendition of Neck and the way they come out with that, the way they just slow it down is it's awesome, man. I love it. All right, that's going to be exciting stuff, Wilton. let's talk about the game. Let's talk about the vibe. This is the first time Prairie View has made it to the Celebration Bowl, and this is going to be year number 10. The 10th game is going to be the 10th game. We didn't have a game in 2020. There have only been 8 teams altogether that have played in this game. And so Prairie View gets his first shot. So their crowd base, their fan base will get their chance to make an impact here in Atlanta. Come invest some dollars in the city. What's the vibe of this game? Wilton, South Carolina State, the team is now, on their third one, and Prairie View's first.
I think the vibes are high. This is a preview team that everybody knows. It's no secret that their fan base hasn't necessarily been the strongest during the regular season in terms of like coming out to games. Obviously, that's well reported. Coach Jackson has even talked about it throughout the season.
Yeah, they don't
And
show
he
up at
actually,
home. No, they don't show up at home.
right, but he addressed it in the press conference after Saturday's win. He said that fans had told him that they were going to come to the SWAC Championship game. If they were to get to Atlanta, they were going to come. So he attributed it as they're going to come to the big games, and if they come to the big games, we're going to win. That's how he looked at it. So I think that you're going to see. I think you're going to see a strong faction of Prairie View fans there. I know that their alumni base in Atlanta, their alumni association that's attributed to Atlanta for Prairie View is pretty strong. I know they're planning some different things for fans that are coming in. So I definitely think that their fan base is going to show up again. I know it's a tight stretch because they would have just came from Jackson and now they're coming to Atlanta. That's not an easy stretch of travel. When you start talking about coming from Texas and coming to Georgia, we know the distance in between there. But I think they're going to show up just because there's a different air of different aura to this Prairie View team after beating Jackson State in the SWAC championship. I mean, the fans, I feel like they knew it, but I think that now that people have seen Prairie View on a bigger stage per se, like in the SWAC championship, I think they're more eager and motivated to see them play in Atlanta, obviously. But then if you start talking about South Carolina State, this is a fan base that definitely travels. Like they traveled even in the years where South Carolina State played in the Celebration Bowl previously. They traveled, and so you're gonna see South Carolina State fans again. They definitely obviously support Chennis Berry. This is a team that wants redemption on the field, and fans want redemption for them. How many times have we talked about on this show how South Carolina State fans felt like we didn't talk enough about South Carolina State? So now
they're in the comments right now. We're just now mentioning them. How long are we into the show? We're almost 30 minutes in. We're just now really getting into South Carolina State. Let's do this. Miles, put the graphic up of attendance, and let's break it down from year number 1, 2015, the very first one, A&T Alcorn State. So you see the attendance. We got over 35. Then the next year, Grambling and Central. We got 31. That was the last year in the Georgia Dome. Then we go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium in 2017. You got A&T and Grambling. Numbers dip a little bit, then we come back up with A&T and Alcorn. Let's make a point here. Wilton, I think when you get a SWAC West team, you have the fans that have the longest driving distance. And I know not all the fans are just around the school. You got fans all over the country. But if you want to count that home base area, when you get a SWAC West team, they are the farthest away. Have you ever driven from Atlanta to Texas? I did it one time. Won't do it 2 times. I did it one time. And I had to break it up. You just don't do that in a day. Let's take a look at the next graphic. We'll keep it moving. There we go. 2019, A&T and Alcorn State. You see the numbers there. All right. Deion Sanders rolls up. Boom. Now you're flirting with 50,000. You're filling up. You're selling out the part that's not blacked out at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It'll hold 71, but they don't make all the seats available. But they were rolling in 21 and 22. 23, a little bit of a dip, but still a good crowd, over 40,000. And then last year, Jackson State, South Carolina State, down to 36.8. So you kind of see the number. You want to be 35 on up to be in the running for a good game. Is that the bar you're going to set for Prairie View and South Carolina State, 35 and up?
I personally don't know if it's going to be 35 and up. I would say somewhere between 33 and maybe 35.5. Well,
Okay.
no, 33 and 34.5. I don't necessarily know if it's going to be like 35 and up.
Low 30s, low 30s. If
Yeah,
it were in the 20s, you would be disappointed.
I would. I would, considering that, this is a Prairie View team. It's their first time playing in the Celebration Bowl. I know they just traveled from Jackson. They get a chance to travel again from Texas to Georgia. This is an opportunity and a chance that I'm not saying they're not going to get back, but we both know that it's not always guaranteed that you're going to get back the next year. So I would think that this is one of those, once in a lifetime chances. Like, hey, Prairie View gets here, we're going to come out support Coach Tremaine Jackson, what he's done in year one with South Carolina State. Obviously, Chennis Berry has been here. He came last year, and they're back this year. I definitely expect South Carolina State fans to be there as well. So I'm hoping that it's going to be somewhere in the low 30s. If it's in the 20s, I would definitely be a little upset.
And this is the first year where the game is moved up a week. Traditionally, it's that Saturday, third Saturday, like right before Christmas. But
Right.
college football playoffs expanding, more NFL games on Saturday. Those are the reasonings that we got, and they make sense. So why you move it up? You definitely don't want to compete with the college football playoffs now that it's expanded. But
Right.
if you're the SWAC, man, you don't know. Like, you didn't know until Saturday night. Look,
Right.
at halftime, you didn't know.
No,
Fourth quarter, you didn't know.
didn't
Like,
know.
are we going to Atlanta? Do we make reservations? Do we got money? We got to drive again? What are we going to do? Are the kids going? Like, there's a whole lot of plans you have to make, and you don't have any time. Like, South Carolina State has known for several weeks now. We are going
Yep,
to
since
be
November 22nd.
yeah. So since before Thanksgiving, they have known we're going to be in Atlanta. You have time to kind of get your tickets, get your reservations, get some things together. So not making excuses, but it's just painting a realistic picture of it's a little bit harder this year for fans out of the SWAC. But you will have your opportunity to show up. One of the first questions we're going to ask in the press conference: what was the attendance on the box score? That's one of the first questions people want to know, because that's an easy story. Attendance is up, attendance is down. Then a couple of days later, we're trying to figure out how many people watched on TV. My unofficial litmus test, unofficial, I don't get credentialed. I don't even submit credentials for the game anymore, because here at Gameday, it's a fist fight in the parking lot of who gets to go to the Celebration Bowl. All right, I've been enough. I'm letting the youngins go. I just buy my ticket and just go watch the game. Right. If my family wants to go, I buy them tickets. Howard and FAMU. I had to lay down some bread on Ticketmaster, Wilton. My wife asked me Monday. She was like, "Are we going to the Celebration Bowl?" I was like, "Well, I'm probably going to go. If you guys want to go, let's get tickets." I got a text back about 30 minutes later. I saw the matchup. I don't want to go.
Yeah.
Now that's just my house. My wife,
Oh, no,
who's an HBCU grad, but not SWAC, not MEAC.
Yeah.
She's a CIAA grad. My high school daughter. These are the two pickiest people in my house. My high school daughter, who has an affinity for Howard, has an affinity for Spelman. She's just in high school. I was like, Mama doesn't want to go to the game. You want to go? She looked it up. Nah, I don't want to go. Now that's just unofficial. That's just unofficial in my house.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
you're kind of casual HBCU fans. But this is an opportunity. Prairie View, South Carolina State, to show up to Atlanta and show out and earn some fans. Because here's the thing, Wilton, you got to gain over the casuals. The people that are on the fence, that are just there for a good time, want to be excited. I mean, you don't have to win them over to win the game, but in the marketing scheme, you got to sell these people.
For people that haven't watched either of these teams legitimately, they probably look at this from a distance and say, this is not the sexiest matchup. Like, some people would say, there's no Jackson State, there's no Southern, there's no Alabama State, there's no North Carolina Central, right? Or FAMU. So they're looking like, well, we've seen South Carolina State before because it's South Carolina State, right? Like, we remember just a couple years ago in the Deion Sanders era that they were there. We know Chennis Berry because we know Chennis Berry, his personality and all of that. But this Prairie View team, like we've been hearing the comments and the remarks from Tremaine Jackson, but do we really want to watch Prairie View? Well, if you like good football, then you will watch this game because Prairie View is a very, very talented team. And I will go on a record to say that even in the very beginning of the season, I didn't know how good Prairie View was going to be. I didn't necessarily have them winning the SWAC West from the very beginning. I for a fact will stand on that. But as they continued to grow, specifically after that Alabama State game, I kind of said to myself, yeah, they didn't necessarily play the toughest schedule, and you only can play the games that you're playing. But at the same time, they were winning in dominant fashion, and I started kind of looking at some film and seeing things like that. And I said to myself, for fans that aren't watching this team, there is a possibility that they could be potentially playing in the Celebration Bowl. Will it be the sexiest matchup? Not really, but at the same time, they can. Prairie View has a chance to kind of set that standard going forward and really kind of start what could be a legacy of them potentially competing in that.
Here's a good example. Alcorn State. So when the Celebration Bowl starts, that was the first time around the same year I moved to Atlanta, and I've been covering CIAA and MEAC. I have seen SWAC, I've seen the Bayou, but had never been to a SWAC game. I knew about Steve McNair, right? But you know, I couldn't sit down and tell you A to Z, soup to nuts about Alcorn State. But Alcorn State kept coming back. These incredible shootout games with North Carolina A&T. And to this day, when I think about Alcorn State, the first thing that pops in my mind, boom, that was that team Celebration Bowl entertaining. They didn't win, but they were showing up consistently, playing good football, and I was entertained. Right. Now, of course, I've learned a lot more, and, you know, I've been covering the SWAC for a long time now, you know, since I've been here in Atlanta. But that initial impression, post-McNair era, stuck with me for Alcorn State's appearance in the Celebration Bowl. You're on ABC. The cameras are better, okay? You got more cameras. You got the Sky Cam. You got the fans. The sound mix is better. Everything is better on ABC. God bless them. They got the money. It is your chance to be your best. You're going to get the eyes. It's your opportunity. You can't get out there and lay an egg.
And it's the first bowl game of the season, of the bowl season.
It's your chance. It's your chance. So what do you think? Who's going to win? If you want to hold it, because we're going to do more content this week. Let me say this. Do you have your pick? Do you need to see anything else? Do you need to hear some more press conferences? Do you have a sense of who you think is going to win?
I wouldn't mind hearing some other press conferences because I've had a tough time. Actually, people have been asking me, who's going to win, Wilton? Who are you going to pick? And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't know yet. And it's Wednesday. This game is Saturday. Usually I kind of know who's going to win. I have a sense of who I think might win. But I definitely wouldn't mind kind of hearing some other things from the press conferences that will happen on Friday. But again, at the end of the day, the games are played by the players. And not the coaches, right? But I definitely think that there are certain things that stand out to me with both of these teams that could be really strong factors in which team wins this game. I think number one will be third down conversions, as I said earlier in the show. I think that whichever quarterback is the most consistent, I think that will play a part in that, which also kind of leads into sustaining drives, third down conversions, first downs, things like that. I also think that whichever defense can come up with at least one turnover, maybe two, I think they also win the game as well.
You know, one thing that's always interesting in the Celebration Bowl, we're used to seeing SWAC teams play SWAC teams all year. And we're used to seeing MEAC teams play MEAC teams all year. Well, at least in November, before they start playing each other. And then when you get to the Celebration Bowl, you're like, wow, these are two different styles of football. Like, you know, we've been watching you over here and you over there. We know we're watching HBCU football, and we talk about you, and we keep you kind of in the same mental container. But when they get out on the field, it's not the same style of play.
No, it's different. And how many years have we talked about the level of, or the difference in physicality? I know that was a big thing of discussion last year with South Carolina State and Jackson State, because this was the notion of, well, the MEAC they have more physicality than the SWAC, right? But then obviously we saw Jackson State have more physicality than South Carolina State on that particular day in the Celebration Bowl. I think with these two teams, I think that this will definitely be a game of physicality that will be matched. One thing that really stands out to me that we're talking about this topic from the presser on Saturday after the game was that Darrell Starling from Prairie View, he basically said that they matched the physicality of Jackson State. And even Coach Tremaine Jackson said that anytime you can match or rise above the physicality that Jackson State brings, that just speaks volume to what lies in this particular conference within the SWAC. So if Prairie View outmatched physicality against Jackson State, South Carolina State has been known for their physicality within the MEAC. What does that mean, Tolly? That means this should be, on paper and even on the field, a really physical game.
And it will all play out this weekend. I know you've already lit up the comments telling us what you think and who's going to win. Keep the comments coming. We will keep the content coming. More coming up before the Celebration Bowl, after the Celebration Bowl. Stay with us all week long. Complete coverage here in the A. Wilton, you're going to be in town. So next time we see you, where do you want to sit? Do you want to sit in Simone's seat? You want this seat right here beside which seat do you want me to keep warm for you?
So I started the year beside you, and I don't, Simone, she can get to talking. So, we want Simone to have her seat. She got a special seat because she got to lean back in it a little bit.
Yeah.
So we'll give her seat, and I'll sit next to you.
Well, she has the cooties today. Today is Wednesday, so we might put her in Studio B over there and just kind of holler across the room. Because ain't nobody got time to be sick. Sorry, Simone. Hope you're feeling better. All right, we'll have more for you this week. Stay with us here at HBCU Game Day. It is Celebration Bowl week, game number 10, celebrating a decade right here in Atlanta.